Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe's Classic Video Games with another cool pinball repair video for you this evening. We have in our window a Bally Strikes and Spares pinball machine. Now, this is for sure a 5-footer. We're standing about 5 feet away and the thing looks great. Oh, it looks cool. But once we look at the playfield, you will feel completely different. I think we've got some customers coming in. The cabinet is pretty nice, not bad, definitely presentable, and the back glass is excellent. I don't see any damage at all to the back glass, but the playfield is rough. When you get a little closer, you see there's some rust on that lift bar, that lift channel there. And then if you look, see how it's dented right there? That's probably where at some point they had the head off and laying on the rails. And another interesting thing is that they have written high scores all over this thing. So it says, I think it says Joey and Jack. Yeah, I definitely see a Joey, but it's not our Joey, it's another Joey. 1,056,000. Uh-oh. And then Joe got 1,129,000. Uh-oh. And then Jack beat it. And then Joey went back and beat him. There's a Joe, a Joey, and a Jack. Their father must have had a sense of humor. Ooh, Jack with the win. He got 2.6 million. You think he cheated? Because here's the deal. Here's the deal, people. There's only 6 numbers. They can't tell if you got a million or not. They can't tell. And can you really complain that they're scribbling all over everything? Look, at the back glass has scribbles all over it. I think this set a bad precedent from the very start whenever they did the back glass to look like an old bowling card. There's a few more up here. Now, somebody was very proud and claimed that they made 2.8 million. They didn't sign it, though, so it could have been someone else. I see this from time to time. It's just a thing. Andrew. Now, I know what you're thinking. If you're a young whippersnapper, you're thinking, why would they do that? Oh, that's so horrible. These punk kids. Let's look at the other side. I'm going to show you why they would do it. It's not on this side. Oh, yeah, it is. Can you see it? So this is a 1961 Gottlieb Flipper Parade that I restored many, many years ago. And you can see we touched up the back glass and painted the entire cabinet and everything. But if you look, at some point, Gottlieb actually had a little spot on the back glass with lights behind it that said previous high score, and you were supposed to take a marker and write your high score and your name on the freaking back glass. So I don't know if that came first or if people were carving it into the game, and so that's why they did that, to try to protect the game. But it was kind of a thing back in the day. People did that. So, yeah, they've carved all over it and written all over it, but old school, baby. So the main problem, like I said, is the playfield. Everything else is pretty good. There's some heavy wear on the playfield. This up here is going to clean up. The plastics look pretty good. I don't even see any broken or anything. Look at this. This guy was just out of control. Who was this? Which guy drew this? I need to look it up. I'm going to guess Dave Christensen. That would be my guess. Yeah, so the plastics look good, but on the playfield, where there now the black will all clean up perfect, but the spots where the like, look at that. That looks really bad, man. And it looks like there's Mylar. How did they put the Mylar over the wear? Please tell me they didn't put the Mylar over the wear. Please tell me there is no Mylar over the wear. And then here's another one. That looks an awful lot like Mylar over the wear. Strangely, on this one, most of the wear is not around the inserts. So usually you get these all chipped up like that. That looks really bad because I zoomed in on it, but it's not that bad. Usually it's much worse. So there's not that much wear there. That would be passable. But then there's just wear in random spots all around the place, and they've put Mylar over the top of some of the wear. So this thing here, we got our work cut out for us trying to make this thing look better. There are cobwebs inside of the glass. Look at that. So this thing has been sitting for many, many years. Sometimes, you know, whenever it's got like debris on the playfield like that, sometimes that's because animals have been in there, but to be honest with you, you can usually tell because they leave, what's the good way to put this? They leave trails. You can tell that they've been walking around. There's filth everywhere. This thing is filthy, but it's from playing it. It's not because animals have been in there other than spiders. It looks like a lot of spiders have been in there. That's fun. You know, spiders are more dangerous than dead rats. But we'll see. I think it's actually going to clean up really well. The playfield, not so much, but we'll paint it. We're going to paint it. Okay, so I think the first, and like I said, the cabinet's pretty good, and the back glass is really good. The back glass looks perfect, but I don't know. We're going to find out soon, though. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to take the glass off of it and try to dodge the spiders and look inside it and see what kind of mess we got going on in there. We're going to start messing with the electrical right now. That is a brand new Alltech MPU board we're going to put in it. I see many dead spiders and evidence of lots of spiders, but I don't see any live spiders. I'm not afraid of spiders anyway, by the way, but what I actually see is a pretty clean game. Now, you're going to say, oh, clean, are you kidding me? It looks like it washed up on the beach. I just mean clean as in it hasn't been hacked to death. They haven't changed a bunch of stuff and screwed things up. They haven't removed wires or added jumper wires. Yeah, there's a bunch of dirt on it, but that can be vacuumed out. It's about to be vacuumed out. The only thing I see that even looks like a mod is they've put duct tape on the chimes to make them quieter, I suppose. I might leave that for just a little bit just so we can see what that sounds like. But yeah, the thing's very, you know, it's got a lot of spider eggs and spider webs in it, but it's actually kind of clean. Doesn't look all that hacked up. So I'm going to pop up the playfield and I'm going to grab the vacuum and I'm going to see how much of this stuff I can get rid of with a simple vacuuming. And then we're going to look in the back box. But before we do that, I want to look at where the power comes in back here, because again, we're starting on the electrical stuff. All right, so there's a bag here with some fuses and a varistor and a bunch of leg bolts. The leg bolts are new. Joe put new leg bolts and painted legs on it. So that explains them. The varistor is missing. From the line filter. it's supposed to be on there. Basically what that does is if the machine gets a power spike, that will save it. Basically that thing shorts and the power runs through there and burns it, slap the crap up over a certain voltage. So we'll have to put that back on. You can run it without it. A lot of things don't even have one, but they put it on the pinball machine so that if you did have a power strike or a power spike or lightning hit the machine, it wouldn't burn up all your nice, expensive, brand new PCB boards. So I vacuumed it up. I didn't get it perfect, you know. I need to get a brush attachment for this big, huge vacuum cleaner that I've got, so I can brush that. But I vacuumed all the stuff out, but there's some dust in there. You can see the trails. But got all that going. And I just quickly did the bottom of the Playfield. And I did the lockdown bar receiver here. I don't know what that is, but it don't look good. And then the pinball is very rusty. So we're going to throw this in the trash. It'd be cool to give these away to kids, but I'm always afraid they're going to throw it. If you hand a kid a pinball, what if they throw it? What if it hits the glass? Or it hits a back glass? I can't take the chance, people. We're throwing them in the trash. All right, so we've got this, I think, about right. Let me lay that down and I'll show you the line filter back there so you can see what's going on with it. So the reason we're even looking at that is because that's where the power starts. So basically this is an unknown machine. We're fixing everything. So the first thing we're checking is we're just looking at the general, you know, the power train, right? So the power comes in from the wall on this big black plug. It's not plugged in right now. So it comes in and then it goes to this line filter. That varistor should be on top of that, connected across these two pins. There is a little thing here that tells you about it. Now there's two different sizes depending on where you're running it. Like if you're running it in England, basically that thing shorts after the voltage gets up over, it's probably not 120, it's probably more like 130. That thing will short and burn up even. But in England, if it did that, it would burn up every time you plugged it in. So they have to change, you know, what's installed depending on where it is. So basically the power comes into there and then it runs off of there, down a couple wires, down to the front of the machine where there's an on-off switch. So the thing is turned on and off, the power is turned on and off pretty much on this side of just barely on this side of the line filter. Once the power comes in from the wall. So all of that looks fine. It's, interestingly enough, it's in there crooked, which they usually didn't do at the factory. So I'm wondering if maybe somebody's replaced that. Also keep in mind the varistor is missing. And I've got one in the bag, so maybe they intended to put it on but never did. But it would have been on at the factory. So that could have been messed with at some point, but it all looks good now. I don't see anything obviously wrong. We were working on a... which one was it? That Galaxy, I think. No, the Galaxy was running. There was some game we were working on recently where the thing wouldn't boot up. It had no power at all. And it was because the wire was broke off of this line filter. So you're just looking to make sure nothing's messed up or doesn't look, you know, all hacked up. Now, you see the little wire nuts there. The wire crimps. That's how it looked from the factory. So I still don't know if that's original or... It's just strange that it's crooked. They usually didn't do that. But everything looks fine. And now from there, the power runs through the switch and then back up into the cabinet to the power supply that's behind this back glass. So I'm going to carefully remove the back glass and we'll get to see what's in there for the first time in a long time. So here is the back of the back glass, and just as I thought, it's pretty much perfect. Now on a Bally of this era, what usually happens is big pieces of it will come off at a time. Now I don't know, this may actually be a little bit too old for that to happen. But it's in really nice shape, as you can tell from the front. No flaking, no heavy damage where something scraped against it, other than just a little bit down at the bottom. That's behind the lift channel, so you can't even see it. A lot of times the bottom of the glass will be flaked up because the water wicks up into it. You know, they spray something on the front of it to clean it. But luckily, this one, nobody's ever cleaned it. So it's still in good shape. It has the credit sticker on it. Some of these didn't have that because depending on where they went. I was almost going to say earlier, I wonder if this wasn't operated around here because of all of the spiders. I've never seen that in a game. Now, I know that may sound ridiculous, but we're here in the Carolinas, and they don't really have basements around here. Everything's clay. There's hardly any basements. Everything's just a little crawl space, or it's on a concrete slab. So I don't see games that have been stored in a basement very often because there's no basement. And that's kind of typically, I would think, where you'd get a whole ton of spiders in them. Maybe if it was in a storage building or something. But I never get games with tons of spiders in them. That's kind of weird. Now, it's much more common to get games with a lot of rats and stuff in them. Look at this. That is just stuck over there. I don't know, man. I'm going to take that off, but... That's strange. I've never seen that. So that was kind of just stuck over there. But it's in front of one of my light bulbs. Can't have that. Okay, so we've got the 5 original displays. Let's see how many of them are burnt, slapped that crap up. So it's always these 2 end digits. Not necessarily on this one, but because the game would say 0, 0 often. Neither of those look all that burned up. That one looks fine. That one's got a little bit, maybe. In the top left corner there of the first digit, maybe. No, I think they all look fine, actually. Yeah, those look nice. Nice displays. So here we go. Let's see how bad this is. Looks pretty nice there. Your typical light surface rust on this thing. Just a little bit of dirt and cobwebs. Look, the board is definitely gone. We must have known that. That's probably why Joey ordered one. Maybe he's already been in this thing. Solenoid driver board. Looks completely original. Doesn't look like it's had anything done to it. I'm looking at serial numbers and stuff. The lamp driver board looks pretty good. And then, of course, the CPU is missing. There are actually... there are little serial numbers on these things. 261917. That's not a serial number. That's their model number for it. I'm trying to see if any of the numbers match. It doesn't really matter, but just be interesting. Those don't have numbers on them. So we've got these here. $378809. 102214. So I don't know. Nothing jumps out as proving that anything's original. It doesn't matter anyway. But okay, so I think the first thing that we're going to do is we've got to work on this. So the place that you'll notice the most wear is on this bottom connector here. So that will kind of tell us the story, I believe. So here is the connector from the cabinet. Nothing's burnt, but they never are. Here we go. So that's the general illumination running to also to the cabinet. One of them's like the voltage coming in, and the other is the voltage going out. I think one of them's back box actually. And then there's that. So what's going on is AC voltage runs through some of these to run the display lights, and they get hot and they start burning up the connector. So that's just what you run into. So you get a situation where these pins on the power supply need to be resoldered from the back, cleaned up, etc., etc. And we kind of need to check the fuses and things like that. So what I want to do is I want to get a screwdriver, and I'm going to take this cage off from around it. I'm going to vacuum it all up, and then I'm going to pull out this power supply, and we'll go look at it on the bench and see if it needs any help. And that'll be our next power step after looking to make sure that the line cord's fine. Okay, so here it is out of the machine. And you can see our first problem is one of the fuses is missing. 4 amp F3. I'm not sure which one that is. That might be... So you've got 10 amp. I'm pretty sure this one is the... I really shouldn't just guess. Let's do it anyway. I think this one is the, I better not guess. We'll have to look it up. So this goes from here to here. So it's this bridge rectifier. Test point 3, whatever it is. We'll look it up here in a minute. So they've removed that fuse because there is a problem. So the voltages, I can at least say what the voltages are. One of them is the... I believe this is just the main fuse for the power supply. And then you've got a voltage for the computer-controlled lamps, I believe. You've got a voltage for the general illumination lamps. You've got a voltage for the 12 volts that is then rectified into 5 volts on the solenoid driver board, which we're going to mess with next. That basically runs everything in the machine. All of the 5 volts, of course, is used by all the IC chips. And then you've got a solenoid voltage. Oh, and you've got a display voltage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so that's your 5 voltages, and then the one fuse is just for the general fuse in the cabinet. So, the display voltage is this little one, 3/4 amps. We know that's the display voltage. These diodes over here, I believe, are for the voltage that runs the computer-controlled lamps, I believe. You'd think I could just look it up. That would mean that this is, well... See, we've got 3 bridge rectifiers. The general illumination lamps are ran off AC, not DC. All right, so anyway, I'm going to take these 3 screws loose. We're going to lay this thing down because we need to look at the back of these connectors and just see how screwed up they are. Can I leave those or do I need to replace them? And then we're going to check these 3 bridge rectifiers and see if they're good or if they're burnt up. Like this one, the fuse is blown. That bridge rectifier is pretty suspect, isn't it? So we'll check that out and then just see how we got to clean, what we need to clean up. And the most important thing is making sure that you have good solder on the back of all these pins so you don't lose the voltage. All right, folks, so we're going to test those bridge rectifiers. So there are 3 bridge rectifiers with a hole in the middle of each one for the screw to attach it to the heat sink on the back. And a bridge rectifier, has 4 little pins. So if you don't know how to test one, I'm going to show you how to test one. Very carefully, if you look on the bridge rectifier, there is a plus and a minus, and then 2 ACs. Okay, so they are. Let me see if I've got one laying here where I can kind of show you. Well, yes, I do. So this is what's on the back side of that. So if you look very carefully on the edge of it, of course this one isn't marked. There we go, it's on the top. See that? You have two squigglies, that's your AC wires, then you have a plus and a minus. So the way this works is, it's really just 4 diodes in there, arranged in a pattern, in a square basically. So they are running AC voltage, you know, your hot and your neutral, to 2 of these legs. And the bridge rectifier is turning it into DC voltage. So it's giving you a negative and a positive. And it's going to be, you know, depending on how much AC voltage is running into it, it's usually a little more than the AC voltage, if I remember correctly. There's a formula to figure it out. So if you're running like 8 volts into it, you might get 10 or 11 out of it. It's something like that, okay? So what's going on is this transformer is taking the 120 volts that's coming out of that line filter that we were looking at in the bottom of the cabinet. It's coming up and it's plugging in to one of these connectors, okay? And then that's feeding this transformer. This transformer has multiple taps on it. And so the transformer is transforming the AC voltage into different voltages. So instead of this putting out just 120, it's turning it into 12 for the 12 volt supply that we were talking about. It's turning it into 6 for the 6 volts for the lamps that we were talking about. It's turning it into another 6 or so, I think it's 6, for the controlled lamps, but it's a separate winding. It's turning it into 190, I believe, 190 volts. Actually, it's more. It's like 220 volts for the displays. They need a high voltage in them. And it's turning it into 43 volts for the solenoids. So it's creating all these different voltages by, you know, that's what a transformer does. And then it's running over to this board that they call the rectifier board, and then it's running through these fuses. So one of these fuses might have 6 volts running through it, one of them might have 12 volts running through it, one of them might have 42 volts running through it, one of them might have 230 volts running through it, right? And that's why the fuses are different sizes. So they're all AC when they get here, and then 4 of them are turned into DC voltages. The voltage for the lights on the have I got that right? Yeah, the voltages for the lights on the Playfield don't get rectified. They stay AC. So that's why you've got this set of 4 diodes down here. That's basically a bridge rectifier. And then you've got 3 encapsulated true bridge rectifiers mounted on the back of this board. So, with all that said, the way you can tell if one's bad is you're basically just checking the diodes inside it to see if any of the 4 diodes have shorted. If you took a Dremel to this and tore it apart, that's what you'd find. You'd find 4 diodes inside of that, connected to these legs. Okay. So the way you check it is you put your meter on diode check, because it's a diode, and then you're going to look for where the positive sign is, and you're going to put your negative lead on that. Right? So we're checking this middle one with the blown fuse, or the missing fuse. We don't necessarily know that it's blown, we just know that it's missing. So if I put my negative lead on the positive, which is actually this test point here, and then touch the AC lead, it will test it just like a regular diode. So it's telling me 0.513. So if you're between 0.4 and 0.7 on a rectifier diode, you're good. So we're at 0.513, that's correct. And then if we check the other AC, 0.515, it's good too. You're looking for a short or an open. So you're looking for it to be 0 or somewhere close to 0, or for it to be really high, like way above 0.7. Okay. Now, if you're doing Zener diodes, they test different. You'll just get different numbers. Okay, so by doing that, what we did was we just checked this diode and this diode. So now we need to check the other 2. So you take your positive lead and put on the negative line, right? And then you check to your AC, 0.525, it's good. 0.538, it's good. Now notice they're slightly different. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so I checked all three of them. All three of them are good, including this one that looks like it's all burnt up. What's going on there is they've replaced that. So that burnt up at some point, and then they put another one in. Okay. If you need to replace them, these all test fine. They might end up being bad once we power it up or something, but if you need to replace them, you can either get the same exact size that was in there. I think these are 8 amp. It says 604. That might be 6 amp. But you can actually put a much bigger one. You can put a 30 or a 40 amp, something like that, by just putting the leads in the top and having it stick out the front of the board. I've done that on videos before. But those three test fine. We'll see later if they actually are. And these 4 diodes down here test fine. So everything tests like it's all right. These resistors, you hardly ever have burn up. Every once in a while, you'll have one that's physically damaged, where it'll be just cracked in half and all messed up, so it needs replaced. But you will rarely have to replace those. The only time you'll have to replace them is whenever you make a video and tell the entire world that you don't need to replace them. Then they'll burn up bigger than beep. Okay, so I'm going to pop this off its holder here, and we'll look at the back of it and just see how fried it is. See what the blood and the guts look like. That almost worked. Gotta get the... I need the little... There's a little tool to pop these loose. But you can use about anything if you can get to it. It's hard doing anything on camera, people. Okay, so this little bar is just a spacer between this plate that acts as a heat sink for the 3 bridge rectifiers that you can almost see. Let me put that somewhere where it won't get all over everything. There you go. You can kind of see it. All right, so there's your 3 bridge rectifiers. You can see that that one has been changed, like I was talking about, and you can see that these are about the same size. So here are your pins. You want to see if any of them have bad solder joints. So that's next. So we're just looking to see if the pins have broken loose of the solder around them. So look at pin 3 there, right in the center of the screen. See the little ring around the pin? So it's questionable. Look at the one just above it. It looks pretty good. So if we come back down to pin 2 there, it looks more questionable. And then if we come down to pin 1, see how there's a line like all the way around the pin? Whoop. So there's a line all the way around the pin. That thing is a pretty bad solder joint. It may still be working, but not for long. It's always the ones on the ends because it's just the way that people naturally pull the connector off. Whenever you pull the connector off, it's going to stress the ones on the end and break them loose from their solder joints. There's one that's burnt. Whenever they're burnt like that, you're going to have a little more trouble getting solder to stick to them. And then you can see the ones down there at the end look even worse. Okay, and this is old school stuff, people. This is late 70s. This is just how they did it back then. You can see that looks okay, but that third one don't look all that great. That one there looks pretty bad. Somebody has a motorcycle. Okay, and then this first one here, it looks pretty bad. But what we're going to do is we're going to resolder all of them. I'll tell you a way that I do it that makes it quick and easy. Quick and easy, people. Take a wire brush. I don't mean a Dremel. I'm just talking a wire brush, like a little hand wire brush, and just go crazy on these things and make them as shiny as you can get them. You know, it should only take you 30, 45 seconds. Just scrape the crap out of them. You're trying to get nice shiny metal exposed, and then put your solder on it. They will flow right up. Flux, all that, you know. So if you've got one that's really burnt up, you might want to consider just swapping the entire connector. You can buy those connectors new. We used to tell people to get them from Great Plains Electronics, but unfortunately he shut down, so we can't get them there anymore. You can get a lot of these Molex connectors if you're looking for specific stuff from our buddy at twistywristarcade.com. Go check out his website. He has all kinds of Molex connectors. twistywristarcade.com. I've never even met the guy, but we buy stuff from him all the time, so I consider him a friend, but he doesn't know that we're sending people his way, but hopefully if you need anything, you can get it from him. Okay, so I'm going to scrape those up, and then I'm going to resolder all those. That's the biggest problem that you're going to have with these power supplies. All right, folks, so we have resoldered them all. I got them nice and shiny with a wire brush, and then they took the solder very well. And you no longer have them looking like they're cracking off the board. Now, a lot of people will buy a new rectifier board for this particular setup, thinking that that's going to fix their problem. It's not really, they're usually not needed, because it's kind of complicated to swap the thing. See all these wires? Those all come from the transformer, every one of them, right? So you got to swap like 20 wires to put this new board on. Well, if you're doing all that, just fix the original board, unless it's just burnt up and it's just got all kinds of problems on it, right? But you're better off if you learn how these things work, because then you can fix them better in the future, you know? So this is a very simple little board, right? All it's doing is it's taking the voltages from pins on the transformer, sending them to certain spots on the board, and then running them through fuses and bridge rectifiers, and then to test points, right? The test points are just to check to see if the voltage is there, but, you know, ultimately the voltage goes to these pins and out of the board. So the main problem in a Bally machine, there's two big problems. One, the game board stops working because the battery eats up the board. And two, you have a bad connection at these particular pins on this power rectifier board. So we're resoldering the pins. We're going to clean the pins on the other side. These are like pretty decent shape, but they're just, you know, corroded and filthy. And then we're going to replace all of the pins inside of the machine that plug in here, because they're all screwed up too. So by doing that, we're going to get a nice solid power supply that's going to be providing all of the voltages that the game needs, and we're getting rid of problems that are going to pop up down the road. You know, some of that bad solder may have been fine this week, but a year from now it's going to be bad enough that it ain't going to work anymore, right? But we just fix that. Hopefully we'll give it another 40 years. So I meet people a lot that are working on these, and they throw parts at them. So they will buy a new board and solder it in, and then they plug it in and the fuse blows, and they don't know what's going on. It's because the old board wasn't the problem. You got a bunch of problems. There's a bunch of stuff going on. So be reluctant to buy new boards. Now, all the boards that you buy are all fine. Like the companies that make these new rectifier boards, there's nothing wrong with them or anything. And notice that I'm going to put a brand new MPU in this game because the thing's missing, and you know I could fix up an older one, but might as well buy a brand new one since it's missing. If the old one was in there, I probably would have tried to fix it. But all of this stuff looks much more complicated than it is. This is literally just a big bunch of wire inside of this transformer. They're taking the 120 volts, they're turning it into different voltages, and then sending it out these wires over to this board. So this board has AC voltages in different denominations on the board. And then some of those it wants to be DC, so it runs them through bridge rectifiers, right? And some of them it just wants to use as AC, and it just sends all of that out certain pins that go to the back box and over to other boards and stuff, right? And then they've also got these little test points on here so you can check to see if the voltages are there. There's really not much more to it. It's a very simple board, so anybody should really be able to fix this if you don't mind working on it a little bit with a soldering iron. So, all right, so I'm going to put it back together, and we're going to put it in the machine, and we need to address those connectors that I was talking about. I'll show you those next. So we've got it mounted back in there. So I looked it up. It's this one. I thought so because of the blue and the yellow wires. This is the one coming from the cabinet. So think about what we're doing. We're following the power into the cabinet and then up to this board. So all we're worried about right now is this connector. We're just trying to take it in order. So what happens is these connectors sit in there like that, and you get all of this dirt falling on them over the years. You can see how nasty those look. This one is probably fine, but since I've got the ability to do it, I'm going to just go ahead and replace all of those pins. So I'm going to very carefully remove each wire and crimp a new pin on the end of the wire. So it's nice and shiny and makes good connection to our pins here that we've cleaned that hopefully are nice and shiny and conduct power well, right? So like I was saying earlier, if you want to get any of these, you can get them at Twisty Wrist Arcade. There's another place, arcadepartsandrepair.com. That guy has all kinds of stuff too. You can check him out. Like I said, I don't even know either one of those people, but I've heard good things and I've bought stuff from him a lot. So, but these are those replacement pins. Okay. Now sometimes you need to replace the connector, which we'll do here in a minute. And you can buy those too. This is one that I've cut down that I used for something. Same thing, TwistyWristArcade.com and ArcadePartsAndRepair.com has a bunch of that stuff. So let me show you how we're going to do it. The first thing I do, they make a little tool you can slide in the top to pull the wire out. But the way they work is there's a little locking pin on the top. So you take a little screwdriver and you push that back in, which allows this to slide back out. All right, so let me do that. Okay, so that took 5 seconds. I just pushed the little pin down, which bent it down flat and allowed me to pull this back out. Like I said, they make a tool that does that too. I don't have it though. So that, by bending that pin, you pretty much ruined this connector, but we were going to replace it anyway. So what happens is the part that touches the pin just gets all screwed up. Right? So we're going to crimp a new one on there. So the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it off. And I'm going to cut the old one off real close to it so that we don't waste a bunch of wire. Yeah, you can cut it back here, but then you might not be able to reach the board right. So you just want to cut just a little bit off. So I cut it off, and then I stripped a little bit of the insulation off. Maybe a little too much, but stripped a little of the insulation off. And now we are ready to crimp the new pin on it. So these crimpers are a whole thing. A good pair of these is like $200 or something for a high quality pair. I ain't spending $200 on a little hand tool, right? So I bought these. These are Chinesium. Basically, they have these little jaws here, and you slide the little connector in the jaw. See it sticking out the other side? And then if you get it in there just right, you put the wire in, and then they're ratcheting. So if you squeeze them, they move up one step. I wonder if we've squeezed it enough. Well, they haven't came open yet, so must have not. Still haven't came open yet. Oh, did you hear that? Right? Dong! Did you hear that little ding? That told us our burrito was ready. Okay, so it has... We got too much stuff in the background to focus that well. It has crimped not only the middle over that wire. See it? See how the metal's touching the wire? But it has also crimped the back part over the insulation. So that's a pretty good crimp. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. So basically it's crimped it in two different places at the exact same time. And it, you saw how you just keep, so like if I pull it in a little bit, it's not all the way in, so it doesn't do it, right? So it won't release until you pull it in the perfect amount. Now look how I've got it squeezed all the way, and it didn't go all the way in. These things are, it's set up just right. And all of these crimping pliers, they all do the same thing. But, you know, you got to get a pair that not only works good, but doesn't cost you a fortune. So if you want a set just like this, see how there's two different heights to that little mountain in there? Another thing is I took the screws out and I reversed them. on most sets, they're the other way around. That's why this looks funny. It's sticking out the top. That's because they were around the other way. Now, why did I do that? Because I'm left-handed. So it works better for me like that. Your pair would be like this. You're right-handed. Right? So if you want a pair just like this, we've got those on our website. There's a link to them on Amazon. They're like 15 bucks or 20 bucks, something like that. So go to Amazon. Don't go to Amazon.com. Go to lionsarcade.com. And at the top, we have a parts page. And so we've got a bunch of the stuff that we have links to on Amazon, stuff like that, that we use whenever we do our repairs. So go check that out, lionsarcade.com. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to replace all of these pins. So once you get it crimped like that, you're ready to slide it back in through there. I don't know if I can do it with one hand, but hey, why not try? This video is not quite long enough yet, right? It's only, what, probably 40 minutes already. Remember to always use your pinky. Get in there, it's your home. Boy, this is some of my best camera work. Well, I can't do it, but you want to slide all the way back down in there. So I'm going to replace each of these and do them one at a time, people, so you don't get confused and get them screwed up. The worst thing you can do is cut the thing off. Now, if you cut it back a little bit, you can cut it off like that, and then you can kind of tell where everything went. But where does the green wire go again? See the problem? You see? Come on, people. Do them one at a people. Come on now. Do them one at a time, people. Come on now. You don't have to be in a big hurry. Okay, so I did two of them, slid them in, and then when I pulled this blue one out, when I pulled it out, the head of it fell off. That's the problem. That's what you're looking for. The thing broke off. So you can see how when that's in there now, with the pin in there, it wouldn't even touch it probably, right? That's your problem. So you're going to run into that all through these freaking things if they've got any kind of corrosion on them. Or, you know, just age. And you remember too, every time that they're pushed in, it flexes that thing a little bit. So eventually the thing's going to fatigue. So that's what we're looking for, just stuff that's damaged. All right, folks, so look at that. Isn't that much better? Now the plastic housing, if it's not burnt, I usually don't replace it. It's a piece, people, it's a piece of plastic. Come on now. Now, if you do replace it, see that little key in there, the third one? So there's a little piece of plastic that goes in there to make it where you can't plug it in wrong. Like I can't plug it in. Well, I guess I could do that. If you do that though, come on, you're a drooling moron. You shouldn't be working on electronics. So it helps you line it up, and it makes it to where you can't plug it in upside down, right? So, wham, there we are. So we now have the power coming out of the line filter up to this board. It's going to go from this board to the transformer, get turned into a bunch of different voltages, and sent back up to the board to go through fuses, and then back out these pins. Okay? But what we're doing is we're not plugging in the other pins yet. This one and this one. Because we want to just test the power supply and see if there's any problems on the board. If I turn it on now and a fuse blows or something, then you know the problem's got to be right here. If I plug this in, this goes to the Playfield. If I plug this in and then turn it on and the fuse blows, wonder what the problem is. Who knows? It could be anything on the Playfield or it could be something on here. So we're just testing it step by step, making it as simple as possible. If this is really redundant to you, I'm meaning for it to be that way. It's the best way to do it. Just simple. Walk your way through it. It's slower that way, but you get the stuff done permanently. I replaced those pins. That's done, folks. Ain't gonna be doing that again. If we are, we're all going to be very happy that we lived that long. So we're ready to plug it in, turn it on, and see. The first thing we're going to do is see if it blows any fuses. I put the one missing fuse in, and then I checked all the other ones to make sure they were the right value. They were not. So I put in the right value on a couple of them that were wrong. So let me look at the power cord to make sure there's not a problem there. We'll plug it in and see what we get. Well, unfortunately, the cord es no bueno. What happened here? Look at that. And then if we go farther down, so basically, we're just checking down it for places where it's messed up. A lot of times on an arcade game, the cord will be messed up because they were dragging it on the floor when they were moving it one time, or it was laying on the ground and they slid the game on top of it. Like, so you'll get stuff like that. You know, I mean, this is Shango level messed up here. This is like the crap he finds out in the desert. So I don't think I can plug it in with that. Your problem is, if the two wires are touching, you get an electro boom situation. And it sucks because this is a cool, these cables are really cool. They're really long, which is good, but I guess that's also part of the problem. What do you think? It's seen better days, hasn't it? So we probably ought to swap a new cable onto it. All right, folks. Busted out the soldering iron. I pulled out the old cord. I had another one in the back that looked like it came off of the same pinball machine, or at least a Midway game or something. Like the early Pac-Mans and stuff had a similar cord. And I swapped it, and then I put the varistor on there while I was at it. Routed it back through. It goes through a little notch that comes out the back of the game. Can you see it? There it is. And it's a big long cord like the other one, but it doesn't have any cuts in it, and it has a good plug on the end. So we're ready to try to turn it on. So we've got this, just the cabinet plugged in. So that's the AC power coming up, but there are other things on that connector. So the other ones are, I think a Solent, well, it's going to be the general illumination for the coin door. I'm not sure what the other ones are. All of that's in the manual, you know what I mean? You don't have to have all that memorized. But since it has the GI for the coin door, when we turn it on, if the lamp, well, one of them's missing. This has reduced our chances drastically, folks. One of the bulbs is missing. That one's in there, though. Let's see if that bulb has hung on since 1977 or 78, whenever this came out. So when I turn the game on, that you might hear the transformer hum, and that bulb might turn on if it works. Yep. Okay, I did not see any fuses blow in the back box. Our varistor is not on fire. And if you listen real close, you can hear the transformer, just barely though. Barely. I think there's a company now that makes a reproduction of that power supply. But as you can see, the problem would be that big freaking transformer. So it's probably like $300. Okay, so we have AC power running to the transformer now. I don't need to tell you it's kind of dangerous to touch that. Don't touch those wires, especially when they're turned on. It would be an electrifying experience. But on the top of this board, there are little test connections. So we need to check all that. So let me set up the tripod, and we'll check those and see if our power supply is outputting the correct voltages. All right, folks, so we're still turned on. We have the meter on DC. Look at my meter. Doesn't I have the greatest meter in the world? This is a fluke. I have all of these wimps that keep complaining, you should clean your meter, Ma. And I keep telling them to come over and do it for me and to wear a little maid's outfit whenever they do it, you know, but they think, you know, that I'm saying something. I'm not saying nothing. I'm just saying, if you really want it clean, come clean it yourself. I don't want it clean. That's a man's multimeter. Okay, so here's what you do. If you're going to test these voltages, you want to get the ground, which you can get at the bottom of this resistor. Just for giggles, Once we get a voltage, I'm going to check and see if you can just use the frame. You may be able to. So on this resistor has a little pin at the top and a little pin at the bottom, so I'm just hooking it around the little pin at the bottom. Okay. That's my ground point. And then I'm just going to use the lead on test point 1. 6.1 volts DC. That's the 6 volts that the lamp driver board uses to turn on and off the light bulbs. Let's see if it works if you just use the frame. It does not. Okay. So you have to use that weird ground. Now, if you have a more modern board, they've probably put a ground test lug on the board. It would be very simple to do. If I was designing one, it would probably be the first thing I'd think of. So I'm sure they thought of it. Okay, so our test point 1 is 6.1 volts. Now remember, nothing's plugged in because the other two things aren't. The only thing that's actually plugged in is the cabinet and the one light bulb on the coin door. Okay, test point 2. 187 volts. So that's supposed to be about 240 or 230, something like that. It's the unregulated voltage that runs the displays. They run up here to this solenoid driver board that we're going to work on next time, and they get regulated back down to like 190 volts. So why is this one at 190 volts right now? It's because it's just an AC voltage with no capacitor or anything on it. And whenever it runs up here, it gets connected to a capacitor, which raises the voltage up to like the 240 or whatever. Right? There's no filter capacitor on it. So, ironically, it's at where it needs to be right now. But it hasn't been regulated. So, if they just ran that straight to the displays, it would work. But they wanted it where they could get it to make sure, right? And they needed to put a filter capacitor on it, which raises the voltage way up. Okay, so what I'm telling you is, with nothing hooked up, that's about right. By the way, on these voltages, since they get regulated later, they don't have to be anywhere near exact. You just want them to be there. If they're way off, yeah, that's a big problem. Okay, board number 3. No, number 3, here we go. 12.9 volts. So that's the 12 volt supply that gets turned into 5 volts by the solenoid board and then runs all of the IC chips on the solenoid driver board, on the MPU, and on the lamp board, on the display boards, on the sound. I think the sound board does its own. This game doesn't have a sound board, but you get my point. So that's correct too. It's at 12 volts. Again, unregulated. If you've got 13, that's fine. And we have this board unplugged. Once you plug this board in, that voltage is going to go way up because there's a capacitor on this board up here as well. So it's going to take your 12 volts and raise it up to like, it might even be 16 or 17 volts. I had a gentleman email about that the other day on a game he's working on. Whoa, don't trip. Okay, so that's test point number 3. So what happens when you do test point number 4? You get 0 volts. So we'll come back to that. Test point number 5 is our solenoid voltage. Should be 43 volts, but notice it's 46 volts. Again, unregulated. It's really not all that important. Why is it a little bit higher? Well, it's because we're not running this transformer off of 115. We're running it off of like 125 or something. Right? Okay, because they've raised line standards or whatever they call it over the years. So why didn't test point 4 give us a voltage? It's because it's an AC voltage. So we changed the meter to AC. Believe me, that's AC, people. You don't need to see it. Change it to AC. Test point 4 is 7.48 volts. But we already knew that because that's the voltage that turns on the general illumination lights, like the one on the coin door. Now that's kind of high too. 7.4 volts. A little high. If you wanted to, because they're supposed to be 6.3 volts. That's what the lamps are. If you run them a little high, though, what's going to happen is it's going to make them burn out a little quicker. They'll still work. If you wanted to, you may be able to rewire the transformer, okay? For 115 or 120 volt input, tie lugs 1 and 3 together, heavy red lead. Yeah, okay. Can you read this? It says, for 115 to 120 volt input, tie lugs 1 and 3 together, heavy red lead. So they're saying if you want it set on 115 or 120. So what they're saying is, what is your line voltage? Do you have 115 coming in or 120 coming in? Then you want 1 and 3 tied together. Okay, and then down here it says, for 120 volt, tie lugs 5 and 7 together. Put the heavy yellow lead on lug 5. And then it says, for 115 volt, tie lugs 9 and 11 together. Put the heavy yellow lead on lug 9. Okay, so you tie 1 and 3 together if it's 115 or 120. And then if you want it set up for 120, you do 5 and 7 together and put the yellow lead on it. If you want it to be 115, you tie 9 and 11 together and put the yellow lead on it. So what's my point? Back in the day, 115 was more standard in America. If you're watching this, we got a ton of viewers overseas, so thank y'all for watching. If you're watching this from overseas, you've got a different thing going on probably. But here in America, it was 115 back in the day. But they've steadily raised that over the years to where now that's not what's going on. We got a lot of juice coming through here now. Let's see here. Let's see if I can get creative. Let me get creative. We are, in fact, tied where it's set up for 115. I'm nowhere near it, by the way. It just looks like I'm touching it, okay? So we are set up for 115. Can you believe it? Right? So here's the deal. Let me, with my meter, I just happen to have the wall socket right here. We're on AC. I can't see. 124. That's what's coming out of the wall. It's not 115. It's not even close to 115. 124 freaking volts passes for 115 now. Right? So they've just jacked up the voltage over the years, which is fine. But in situations like this, it screws you up. So this is set up to get 115 volts, but it's getting 124 volts. So it's changing everything a little bit. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually move that wire, and I'm going to tell this transformer, hey, you know what? We don't have 115. We got 120. And then we'll test those voltages again and see if it gives us a slightly different voltage on those general illumination lights. All right, folks. So I removed the yellow wire from these two, and I cut the little wire that they had joining these two. I put a little cap leg to join these two, and then I put the wire down here on these two, just like it says on the diagram. Okay, so let's see if that has changed anything, or if we catch on fire or anything. Here we go. The light bulb looks just as bright. So what were we at? 7.2 or something like that? Throw in AC. Let's see if that changed anything. It may have not. .1. So it changes it a little bit, which, you know, you can kind of expect. If we're telling it that we're putting 120 instead of 115, we're saying, hey, it's 4% more. So did it lower the voltage 4%? I don't know. I'd have to rewind and see it. You guys can do the math. And I don't know that it would have changed any of the other voltages. Let's see. So our 43, yeah, it did. Look, our 43 is now 43.8. Before it was 46 or something. 12.2, 178. And 5.73. So I think it makes sense to do it. I think that's a good idea. All right, so The whole effect of this entire video is we got one light bulb to work. But that's fine, isn't it? I mean, this poor thing. But you know what? When we started, the cord was all messed up. Now the cord's good. When we started, the varistor was missing. Now the varistor's been put back on. When we started, it was set at the wrong voltage. It was set in 1977 voltage instead of 2023 voltage. So we fixed that. Now it's running at 120 instead of 115. Very minor, but we did it, right? When we started, it was full of cobwebs and spiders. All of that's gone now. Never to be returned. Right? When we started, there was a fuse missing, and there were 2 other fuses that were the wrong value. We fixed all of that. When we started, the pins had bad solder joints all over them. We fixed that. So now we know all of that's good. When we started, we didn't know if the power supply worked. Now we've tested all of the voltages, and we know they're all good now. So we got a nice, solid power foundation to build the rest of the game on. When we started, the connector, at least for the cabinet that goes into the power supply, had at least one pin that was about to break, and then the other ones weren't looking that great. Now they're all new. Okay? So we went through it slowly. It took me several hours this evening to do it, but our power supply is rock steady, baby. The power supply is good to go. Don't have to worry about that anymore. So now I can put that cage back around it. And I know that that is fine. I've tested all of the voltages. I tested the bridge rectifiers on the bench. Of course, you know, if the voltages were gone or if it blew fuses, you'd know that the bridge was bad. And we've got all of that ready to go. So next time, we'll work on the solenoid driver board and then maybe see if we can slide that Alltech board in there. I'm calling it an Alltech board. There's a company, Alltech Inc., I believe it is, that makes a brand new MPU for these. If I like fixing the old ones. If the old one was in there, I probably would have tried to fix it, but it's not in there, so we bought a brand new one. We think this thing's going to probably turn out pretty nice. Yeah, I said it. Even with the Playfield looking like that, I think we're going to fix it up. So why not put a brand new board in it, especially if the original one's missing? So we're going to get into that. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to leave your comments below. Give us a thumbs up for taking the trouble to film it for you. We didn't have to do that, people. Look, I'm the last one here. Look, the whole city's done with the sleep. But we enjoy filming them. We have a lot of fun kind of showing you all the cool stuff that we run into. Like, you know, I got those cobwebs and stuff on camera. That's kind of neat. Might want to look back and watch that one day. Man, we had this game one time. It came in. It looked like Charlotte's Web. All right. So leave your comments below. Let us know what you think. And you know what? Don't forget to check out my brother, Donnie. My brother has his own channel here on YouTube. I'm over there helping him with that a lot. If you enjoy us working on old pinball machines, arcade games, and jukeboxes, my brother Donnie works on old vehicles, old buildings, things like that, and he owns a farm that has goats and cows. What could possibly go wrong? So make sure to check him out, and we will see you in 2 days with the next video where we'll work through the solenoid driver board.